This episode dedicated to Gen Zers and millennials. Murray Harris from Milford has crunched the numbers on your savings and retirement so you don't have to. Last week we spoke about the magical age you need to start saving and investing to make sure that you keep the comfortable life you're used to when you can't or won't work. The answer might surprise you, the numbers might surprise you today too. If you're a regular listener and you're a bit older, feel free to forward this on to your kids or your grandkids or younger people in your life. First, here's your top 5 business bits. Number 1, the US Fed, that's their central bank, cut 0.25%, but described it as more of an insurance cut to keep the economy going, rather than the start of a pedal-to-the-metal cutting cycle. In contrast, at number 2, the Bank of England held rates steady. They're keenly focused on keeping inflation in check. Unlike the US, which has missed their inflation target for the last 4 years now. Number 3, US consumers are a resilient bunch. US retail sales increased for August, partly due to those higher prices, inflation, but also wealthier Americans feeling richer with the stock market going gangbusters. Number 4, New Zealand Q2 GDP was grim, down 0.9 quarter on quarter. But behind all that noisy data, in fact the noisiest it's been in about 25 years, details of the print were more encouraging. Household consumption rising a modest 0.3 quarter on quarter. And number 5, it's a quiet week on the data front, but watch the AI enthusiasm drive those tech stocks higher. All right, let's not muck around. Murray is here with the numbers. Let's crack into it. This is Murray Harris, head of KiwiSaver and retail at Milford. Just a reminder, this segment is informational only and should not be considered financial advice. Murray, welcome back.
Great to be back.
Good to see you. Now, you were watching last week, we had Jane Wrightson on, the Retirement Commissioner. I was quite shocked. I mean, it's not fair that as soon as you start working, you have to start saving for when you're not working. But You think that's probably on the money?
Yeah, I think she's right. I mean, I was really quite pleased to hear her say that you should start saving from your first pay packet. It makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. The longer you can benefit from the compounding returns of investing from a very young age, and when you start working, you've got that extra income. So why not? Albert Einstein said, "Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it. Those that don't pay it." So the earlier you can start saving, the better, and the longer you're going to benefit from the effects of compounding interest and compounding returns.
I'm not going to argue with an Einstein quote. What I like, Murray, is you've come along with some data, some hard numbers for us. So crunching the numbers on, let's start with if you're 18 and you come out of school, you go into a job, you start working and you start investing in KiwiSaver. What are we looking at?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought, you were saying to Jane last week, maybe you start saving in your mid-20s, you have a few years of earning and, spending and enjoying that money. And she's saying, no, do it from your first pay packet. So I thought, well, what's the difference, 18 and 25, right? Let's say you get your first job at 18, first pay packet. I looked at the median income for an 18-year-old last year was $54,000. So let's assume let's talk about the new rates coming from 2028 in terms of contribution rates. Let's just assume 4 from the employee, 4 from the employer into a growth fund.
Yeah.
By age 65, that 18-year-old's going to have a KiwiSaver balance of $429,000, which is going to give them $350 a week in income at retirement from age 65 through to 90 on top of their New Zealand super. That's a reasonable amount of money, just under $500,000. If you wait until you're 25, even though your income's gone up, so the median income for a 25-year-old is $66,000, let's assume doing the same 4 plus 4 into a growth fund, they end up with $383,000 at age 65. That's $46,000 less to enjoy. That's $40 a week less to spend in retirement. That's a lot of money. It can be a couple of bottles of wine or a lunch out every week. So That makes a difference.
I suppose the counter to that is that 7 years between 18 and 25 that I'm not spending 4% at the pub, right?
Well, this is the point, right? Is you get used to living on your take-home pay.
True.
So if you take that money out from your first pay packet, you get used to spending, what you've got left. I love Buffett quotes, and he's one of the world's best investors and probably a pretty good saver. He said, "Do not save what's left after spending, but rather spend what you've got left after saving. It's a bit of a quote to get your head around, but it makes complete sense. He's saying, prioritise your saving ahead of your spending. And of course, we've got to cover our basic living costs.
Yeah.
But what do we all do? We go and spend like crazy, and we go, oh, I'll save what's left. That's actually the wrong way to think about it.
Yeah. No, Buffett, Einstein, I'm not arguing with this. So, but also the thing with KiwiSaver, I mean, you talked about compounding interest, but with KiwiSaver, it's not just my 4%, right? The employer is giving their 4% too.
That's right. Yep.
So it's more than that.
So if you delay your saving for those 7 years, you're not getting your employer's contributions, you're not getting the government's contributions, and you're not getting the compounding effect of the investment returns. At that 7 years, that's how you very quickly get to that $46,000 difference.
All right, what if you're already beyond this? You know, you're like me in your 30s. Have you done some numbers for us on a 30 or 40-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, look, the longer you delay, the worse it gets, even though your average income goes up. But I would say if you're not already saving, there's never not a good time to start, right? So if you're not doing it already, start today. But if we look at those same numbers for a 30-year-old, even though the median income for a 30-year-old is $72,000, again, 4 plus 4 into a growth fund, at age 65, the 30-year-old's going to end up with $331,000 KiwiSaver balance. That's $100,000 less, or $80 a week less to spend in retirement versus the 18-year-old. And then a 40-year-old, median income $79,000, 4 plus 4 into a growth fund, you end up with $214,000 at age 65. That's half what you would have had if you started at 18. It's $170 a week to spend in retirement versus $350. So yeah, the longer you delay, the worse it gets.
And that means you're either having to work longer than you would otherwise want to or have to, or make some pretty tough choices about what you can actually afford in your retirement.
Probably both.
Yeah, some big decisions. Now, I'm assuming that when you talk about the median income, that you, for a 25-year-old, say, you've worked out, you put it in a calculator, worked out what the median income will be at 25 and then 26, 27, not just at 25 for the rest of their life, right?
It adjusts. So I think it's a 3.5% adjustment in salary from that age is the way our calculator works. So people can do these figures for themselves. It's on our website. It's called the KiwiSaver Retirement Calculator, and you can go in and plug in your own numbers. And all the assumptions are inside there. You can have a look and see what the assumptions that we're using. We adjust for inflation, we adjust for wage inflation, and then you can try different contribution rates, because I've just used 4 plus 4. But imagine if you were doing 6 or 8 or 10, you can very quickly get to $1 million retirement nest egg by having to play around with the calculator.
Interesting. Okay, so the difference between those two, outer age groups is $250,000 basically.
Yep.
Potentially. All right. So what about when you are, young and you get into your first job and you get put into, and I was in one of these for probably 10 years, to a default KiwiSaver provider. What is that? And do you have to stay there? How do you look at changing that?
Yeah, well, that is the other important thing for young people. If you're joining the workforce, let's say you're that 18-year-old getting your first pay packet, you probably haven't thought too much about, KiwiSaver, am I going to do it? Which provider should I choose? So you'll be most likely defaulted into one of the 6 default providers. And your employer is probably unlikely to be talking to you about your KiwiSaver. It'll just happen. You'll get a KS2 form probably when you fill in all the details, your IRD number and your name and address and payroll and your bank account. There'll probably be a KiwiSaver form, and you'll tick a box and they'll deduct the contribution from your salary, and that'll go to a default provider. But there are, so 6 default providers, but there are 28 providers out there, over 300 funds to choose from. So yeah, you don't have to stay in a default fund. And the default funds are all balanced funds. So if you are 18 and let's say you're saving for anything more than, say, 7 years, a balanced fund may not be the appropriate fund. You might be wanting to look at a growth or an aggressive fund, so you can grow your funds faster, and you've got time on your side to be able to handle the ups and downs of markets. So you can move to another provider and you can choose a different fund. Might be a growth fund.
And how do you know, because the younger you are, I'm assuming, at my age, I'm going as aggressive as I can, because I think, you probably got a bit more time on your side, you can probably wear a bit more risk. Is that what you would normally advise people, or how do people figure out which fund to go in?
Depends on your goal and your time horizon. So an 18-year-old might be thinking, I want to buy my first home when I'm 25. So, in that case, 7 years, a balanced fund might be appropriate. But let's say they're thinking, well, I'm 18, I'm going to start saving for my first home. I'm going to buy that when I'm 30 or 35 or whatever it might be. They've got a longer time horizon, they can afford to take more risk, and so a growth fund might be more appropriate. If you've already got the first home, and let's say you're in KiwiSaver at 25, you're in it for 40 years. Say, your goal is for retirement, so you can afford to take more risk. You can ride the ups and downs of markets, and so generally you'd be looking at a growth or an aggressive fund.
Now, there's a lot of options out there, obviously, for people to choose from, and a lot of different providers. And there's an old Māori proverb, and I know you've been giving me some quotes today, that says the kumara should never talk about how sweet it is. But it would go amiss if we didn't mention some of the awards that Milford has been picking up just recently.
Yeah, look, we're very, very proud of the awards. And, these, I guess they help people decide who's a good provider. There is so much information out there. There's, I should mention the Sorted website, right? Jane was here last week, sorted.org.nz. You can go and compare providers on things like performance and service and fees. There's the Morningstar survey where you can compare funds on after-fee returns. And I say to people, look at the long-term returns, 5 and 10 years. Don't look at the best performing fund in the last quarter or the last year. And there are a number of awards now that are awarded to providers who have shown excellence in market-leading performance and service and fees and value for money. And so we were very, very proud this week to have been announced the CanStar Provider of the Year for KiwiSaver for the 6th year in a row, and also the CanStar Outstanding Value Provider of the Year for the 6th year in a row. So I think they call that a double hat trick, don't they? And that came on the back of 2 weeks ago being named CanStar's Most Satisfied Customers Award for KiwiSaver. And that award, very, very proud of, because that's a survey of over 3,000 KiwiSaver members from right across the industry, across lots of different providers. And CanStar asked them a series of questions, basically, how satisfied are you with your provider in terms of their performance, their service, their value for money, their fees. And we've come out number one in that one for the 2nd year in a row. So extremely proud of the team and what we've achieved there. But of course, we're working hard on behalf of our members. We don't go out to win the awards. We exist to help our members and our clients achieve their savings and retirement and financial goals. But very, very nice to be recognised along the way.
It's a hell of an achievement. And when I'm out and about, I obviously have an affiliation with Milford. People rave about Milford. So congratulations.
Thank you. Very cool. Proud.
Well done. Now, just before we wrap up, because you've given us the data, you've given us the numbers, I want your top tips, your top 3 tips for people who are looking at getting into KiwiSaver, investing in KiwiSaver, or who are in perhaps a default scheme and haven't really thought about it before.
Yep. Look, I think Jane's absolutely right. Start as early as you can. Your first pay packet is a great time to start before, if you can. Again, maximise the effects of that compounding returns. Let compounding interest be your friend, right? Coming back to the Einstein quote. Number 2, partner for success. First pay packet to final pay packet could be 50 years or more, right? So it's a very, very, very special relationship. It's one you need to have trust in and confidence that your provider can help you achieve your financial goals. And number 3, use that independent research. Look at the research reports that are out there. Look at the awards and use them to help you choose a provider that you think can help you achieve your goals, and that's got a long and consistent track record of excellent results.
Excellent. Murray, well done.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That was Murray Harris, Head of KiwiSaver and Retail at Milford, with all the numbers you need to know on retirement. Just a reminder, you can like, follow and subscribe this podcast wherever you like to listen. And if you are not within the age group we were talking about today, feel free to share it with those younger than you in your life. In the meantime, don't forget to invest in yourself.